So today I'm going to show you a couple of my favorite exercises that I like to prescribe to my clients with shoulder problems, especially involving control of that shoulder ball in its socket. So the main exercise I'm going to give you today, these three are going to involve the rotator cuff muscles. These rotator cuff muscles are a group of 4 muscles, small muscles because they're acting as stabilizers rather than big movement muscles like your lats. So they kind of wrap around different points of the shoulder, the ball of that humerus, and they pull that ball into its shoulder socket so that it holds it flush against that joint here, so it's not going to slip out. So what happens is they hold, and as your arm's lifting or you're using your arm above your head or in your shoulder, this kind of position, it's going to hold that ball into its socket tightly so it doesn't slip or move around. So sometimes a weakness in one or all of this rotator cuff muscles can result in that ball moving excessively or even starting to get pulled forward by some of the dominant muscles, mostly like your pectoral muscles or your delts. It starts to come forward and jam forward as you use your arm. So a lot of times people with this kind of problem where they've got dominant front shoulder muscles and don't have very strong back muscles or rotator cuff, we tend to present with what we call bursitis or shoulder impingement, where it's just getting friction in that front area, or they can just get actual overload of these 4 little muscles. If they're not strong, the muscle just gets worked beyond what it's able to manage, and it becomes a source of pain itself. So today I'm going to show you 3 exercises that can help with this issue. The first one is you just actually need a band like this, a loose band. It can be a tube as well, preferably one long enough that you can tie 2 loops at the end, one bigger than the other, and you'll see why. Or if it's a pulley system with handles, that works as well. But you can loop it around the door handle or something stable, a pole or something that you can fixate it to. And the first one I'm going to show you is where you're actually holding onto the band with long fingers, so you don't use your forearms. We're trying to isolate it to this shoulder here. Is pivoting it inwards. So you're going to maintain this elbow flush against your rib cage, and you're going to pull inwards like you're patting your tummy and then slowly releasing it. So you want to stand at an angle where when you release it, your arm ends up out this angle like that, out wide. So you might even have to stand more side on to actually get that full range of motion. So you pull in, and as you slowly release, you're controlling that so it doesn't pivot out like that and jump. So we want to work on that slow controlled movement. So this one you should be feeling in the back of the shoulder. Sometimes it helps to actually put a rolled up towel or a cushion just between your elbow and your rib cage, just to help you remember to keep the elbow in so the movement doesn't come from any other muscle but your rotator cuff, which actually pivots your arm, purely pivots it inwards and outwards. Okay? So then you want to do the other direction, where this time you're going the other way, going outwards. So you'd be standing where you can actually pull against the band out that way. So again, you want to make sure that the movement's coming from the shoulder and not your elbow. So the elbow needs to stay right by your side as you're pulling it outwards. So this tends to be a little bit of a weaker muscle, the outward movement. So it's a great one to retrain, especially if you're getting that front shoulder pain as well. Okay, so the outward pivot. And then the last one, this is where you need both the loops. Get the bigger loop, slip it around your arm into your elbow, and then pop the other around your hand on the same hand. So now what we're going to be feeling is when you add tension on both, you should be feeling a little bit in your shoulder blade at the back, middle back muscles, and then in your rotator cuff, the back of that shoulder. Okay, so you want to be feeling this sort of, because you're holding your shoulder blade in a nicer position when you've got that resistance against the elbow. It actually helps you think about setting your shoulders back, and then from there you're adding that little pivot action. So it's actually a multitasking, multifunctional exercise. It's great for those who are like in cricket sports or throwing sports, softball for example, even like, you know, tennis players overhead. Sometimes they have problems with this area because things are not being stabilized or being locked down in the back shoulder blade area, and then the rotator cuff doesn't work so well because everything is starting to almost drop forward when you're trying to pivot back. So this way, with that band in the elbow, is helping you think about locking that shoulder backward, elbow stays fixed, and then you add that pivot action. So that should get a nice little burn in your cuff, which is around that back here where it attaches from your shoulder blade into that ball, top part of the ball of your shoulder, where it pulls it into its socket. So they're my three go-to. You can actually pivot around the other way and do exactly the same thing with a forward pivot. So you're using that angle to help you work on the shoulder blade stabilizers as you pivot forward and control it back so it doesn't snap back without control. So give these 3 to 4 little exercises a go and see if you get a nice shoulder burn at the back. You shouldn't feel too much in the front at all. If you do, that's your pectorals or your delts taking over and maybe the resistance is too hard, or if the angle is too high and you're quite weak in that angle, then maybe drop it down a little bit and try it in that sort of 45-60 degree angle where it's not so heavy having to lift the whole weight of your arm against gravity that way. Give those a go and I'd love to hear how you went.